You're listening to the Beyond Sundays podcast, where we tell stories of God's faithfulness, because the God who did still does. It is so great to be back, y'all. It's time to kick off season 3 of the Beyond Sundays podcast. And I am so excited about this season as we have some incredible guests and conversations lined up. As you know, school is right around the corner, which is crazy. I can't believe it. And with that, we find ourselves falling back into familiar routines and rhythms. Getting back to the basics, right? The things that matter most. So to kick off season 3, we are talking about some of the basics of what we believe here at Beltway Park as important in the life of every believer. We are going to talk about community, loving and serving others, being discipled, and what that looks like within the family of God. But today, we're kicking it all off talking about community and friendship with Keri Hoes. Keri is a friend of mine and someone who I have seen do community quite well. But it hasn't all been easy. So I wanted to have her on to encourage you in this area by sharing her story and her journey with Jesus in this area. You've likely already heard us here at Beltway Park talking a lot about groups for the Spiritual Growth Campaign, and it's true. We are going to keep talking about it, about how important it is to get connected to community because we know how valuable and needed it is for every believer. But maybe you're really struggling in this area to find community with people you feel like you can connect with. Maybe you have some social anxiety, or you just flat out feel alone right now, even though you might be surrounded by tons of people. What I wish I could do is sit across from you as we have a cup of coffee together and tell you, don't give up. Don't give up on community. We know we need each other. We were made for connection. We were designed for relationship. So please join us today as Keri shares her journey of finding friends, embracing the awkward, getting hurt, and trying again. Let's get to it. Well, hey, Keri Hoes, how you doing today?
I'm great. How are you, Sarah?
I am doing fantastic.
Good.
I'm so thankful to have you here today because we're going to be talking about a conversation that you and I have had oftentimes when it comes to community. And the reason why is because personally, I look up to you in this place and definitely appreciate the way you have lived this out. I know it hasn't always been easy. I know it's been a challenge. You've been very open and honest about that, over the years. But we prayed before, obviously, we started this conversation. And in the prayer, I was reminded, I've gleaned a lot from you, and so have many others. And so I'm excited to have you on the podcast today to have a conversation about the importance of community and how to have it, how to find it, how to keep it, how to cherish and steward all of those things.
Well, I've had so much heartache that I'm like, if I can share it to the world so they don't have to have it.
Yeah,
learn,
for real.
Learn from me instead of having to hurt.
Yes. So, Keri, before we dive into all of that, why don't you tell us a little bit about you?
Okay. I'm a stay-at-home wife and mom and married 22 years to Chad. He's my very best friend. We get along. We love each other. We fight a lot too, but we love hard as well. I have 3 dogs that are ridiculously important to me. This time next year, we'll be looking at empty nesting.
Wow.
And pretty excited about that. Love that season that we are concluding, but ready for the next. So
that's exciting.
That's me.
Well, that's awesome. Well, like we mentioned before, this journey when it comes to friendships and community and finding that, having that, keeping that, nourishing, and really investing in other people is something our culture doesn't really do a very good job of.
Yeah.
But we know that we were designed for it. God made us to need other people. And so this process has been a journey for you over the course of your 20s, 30s, and 40s. So I'd love for you to give us just a quick overview of what it's looked like in your life, in your story, to have community, pursue community. What are the things you've learned over the course of this journey?
Yeah. Well, as I was driving here this morning, the Lord wanted me first to remind everyone that it is never locked and loaded and done. It is evolving because humans, think about who you were 5 years ago, 2 years ago, or even last month or last week, So when you're dealing with humans, it's always evolving. and it's alive. So I wanted to kind of hit that first. I felt like the Lord wanted everyone to know that it's not a formula. And you'll learn about boundaries, and then you think you've got it down and meet a new friend that challenges those, and you have to rethink it. And it's constantly talking with the Lord. So it does sound exhausting to maintain relationship. And I would also want to speak to that Jesus leading it makes it less exhausting.
That's good.
So to answer your question, though, I kind of even went back. We talked about my 20s, but in my kid years, I just wanted to be with the adults. So I wasn't really a good friend. I mean, that was not natural for me, even as a child. If we played, I wanted to play store and count the money. It wasn't, I'm not.
Hey, I wanted to do that too.
Not very creative. I loved Monopoly. It's just like,
oh yeah,
I'm very goal oriented, and would rather have sat around watching my parents and grandparents play dominoes, which that I'm sure speaks volumes. So even then, it didn't feel natural. Mm-hmm. In my 20s, I kind of remained in the pattern you do as a child. And, I picked friends based on who was in school with me, who sat next to me at church, or just proximity. And also really influenced by the shows of my years where you had that one best friend and they met all your needs. And I didn't need anybody else. And that really led to so much heartbreak. Because if you look at Jesus, I mean, he had 12.
That's right.
And he spread that out among other people. And so to even say my spouse can meet every one of my needs that's a lot for Chad to carry if I just put all of it on him. Mm-hmm. Or to go, it's just Chad and plus one. So I began to really grab hold of the way Jesus did it in my 20s. And then in my 30s, I grew so much in my identity with Jesus to know who I am and what I offer. And getting comfortable that I wasn't everyone's favorite.
That's right, yeah.
And
that's hard. That's hard to be okay with.
I want everyone to love me.
Yes, everybody I think has that in them.
Yes, some version of it for sure. And so getting comfortable with, hey, I'm really good in grief and heavy situations, but I can also be really funny in those to lighten it. Well, not everyone wants that. Mm-hmm. So learning myself and knowing who I was in Jesus and how I offered and what I offered allowed me to read the room a little better and then get comfortable with who I need in my life. Mm-hmm. And then in my 40s, I've learned such how important time is. I only have so much time. Yeah. And so really grasping who gets that and how much, and not in a stingy way, because I know we can be stingy with our time. Right. But learning to steward that and going, hey, this relationship, I see fruit from it, and so I'm going to give it more space. So that kind of, I'm still in my 40s. I don't know what my beyond's going to offer, but that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. And something that I love about you too, that you do this well, is that your friends are all the same age as you. Yeah. Neither are the people that you do life with. Like your couple friends, right? Your people you do life with are not all in the same stage of life.
Oh, I love that.
So you've got girls who are a lot younger than you that you invest time in and that you love and enjoy being around. But you also have women that are in their 60s, and older that you are receiving from and hanging out with and, doing life with too. And so it's a broad spectrum. And I think something that you mentioned earlier is something that a lot of us may feel at some point or another. And it's that lie that there is that one person who's going to meet all the things that we need in a friend.
That's called Jesus.
Yeah.
I mean, honestly.
That's right.
He's the only one that is going to be sure-footed and so consistent, and we can't put that on a person.
Yeah.
I don't want to have the weight of that. I want to be your friend, but to carry all of your stuff, plus the crazy that can go in my brain and my whole life, that's too much to ask.
That's right. Well, let's go back to that piece of Jesus, because you in your 20s and 30s began learning and walking in your true identity as a daughter, right? And learning that Jesus was your best friend.
Yeah.
And so I'd love to ask you, as you began walking in your identity, how did you see your friendships in the community like actually shift?
Okay, so the lie, I think we all have like a reoccurring lie that Satan loves to just throw out. And for me, it was, I'm too much. So I feel too much, or I joke too much, or, blank too much,
Yeah.
And it was probably my later 20s, started getting familiar with that. And God put a really good friend in my life that kind of had the same childhood as me, as like, wasn't super creative. And she was Air Force, and we decided she and I were going to figure this out together and call each other out and practice. I mean, we had it was embarrassing almost, where you're going, okay, I don't know how to be a friend. Will you be the friend that teaches me how to be a friend?
Oh, that's good.
And it was awkward. And we just decided together to get comfortable with the awkward.
Embracing it.
Yes, yeah. And because she's Air Force, like she was really good at connecting for 2 years, and then she'd move to her next spot.
Right.
And I said, I don't want to be that. I want you and me to go forever. If the Lord approves of that. Of course, there's seasonal stuff, but she and I dug in. We are now, I guess, 14 years in and still really close. We haven't lived in the same city since then, but we got to practice. And I say all that to say that I had somebody that would let me be awkward in my identity practicing. We'd go out, and I could call her later and say, okay, I felt awkward when I said this.
Right.
Did this glorify God? Was this too complainy?
And how many of us have gone out on a girls' night and then called our friend later going, did I sound dumb when I said this?
Yes. And I had that one safe friend to really start practicing. I want to be who God says I am, but it feels weird sometimes when you're out in public, especially if it's new, to say, hey, we just prayed through and made a list of all the things we wanted in a new car, and God gave us a car. When you're not in that culture, that feels awkward. So to have someone have my back and say, hey, you gave God the glory and you sounded confident, just to get it was like having training wheels, really.
There you go. Yeah. I like that.
So that, specifically in community, tying it to my identity, that was a big key piece.
Yeah. Something else that we had a previous conversation before today, and something that you said that I wrote down that was so good. You mentioned you could be awkward with friends.
Yeah.
Because you always had a safe landing spot with Jesus. Like you knew who you were with him first.
Yeah.
And everything flowed from that. So all your relationships flowed from the place of a safe spot with Jesus, knowing he would never leave you. He was always your best friend. And so because you were confident in him and who you are in him, you could be you.
Yeah. That's not easy. And it's like building a muscle, I wrote down, I love working out. And if someone wanted to work out, I wouldn't say, okay, go run a marathon tomorrow.
Right.
I've ran marathons, so I would show them like my previous steps to how I built to that. And to think, I'm going to have community. I don't have any today. And tomorrow I'm going to join this life group or meet these friends and then cannonball in, and it's just going to be beautiful. I hope that happens for you, but it's not practical. I mean, there's probably one, I don't know, I'm making up numbers now. There's like 1 in a million person that has the endurance to just get up and run a marathon tomorrow.
Right.
Without the training, but that's not real life. And so it's a building of a muscle to incorporate Jesus being your filter and your identity.
That's good.
For me, that looked like I'd have a girls' night out and try something new, or go to a new women's thing at church.
Yeah.
And feel completely awkward because I didn't know anybody. And then I'd get up in the middle of the night and Satan would start tormenting my mind of, I can't believe you said this. Why did you wear that? All the little nitness. And that was my opportunity to build the muscle to say, well, Jesus gets to say who I am.
It's good.
And I might pick like one crazy good scripture that speaks to that I'm the child of God. And even if I was saying it 90,000 times over and over in my head, I was combating the enemy to where it became so natural. Mm-hmm. So when you run, I don't run as much anymore. I'm using this as an example because it was such a big part of my life. You kind of keep a base when you're doing half marathons or fulls, so you want to keep like a 5-mile base. To me, that's the same thing as that scripture and that muscle you're building of, I want to keep a base that I know these scriptures so that when my identity is attacked, I'm just going straight to those. Mm-hmm. And then that muscle, if you work it, it stays longer, leaner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's good. I love that you use that example because it kind of puts like a practical explanation to something that we're talking about here. It's like, and as you were talking, I kind of got a picture. I mean, this is the summertime, so I'm in my pool a lot, and swimming a lot with my kids, and just really enjoying being in water because it's hot.
Yes,
so hot,
so hot.
So the image I got was my grandparents growing up. My grandparents had we had a pool growing up, but we didn't have a diving board. They had a diving board. You know?
Yeah.
And so I loved going over to their house, and we would also play dominoes around their kitchen table too, so it was lots of fun. But I remember like the first time I ever jumped off that diving board was a little scary.
Yeah.
I mean, that water was deep, right? The pool going down to the bottom was like my goal. I wanted to go all the way down to the bottom and get that dive stick I just threw down in there, right? But that's not, I mean, I don't remember how old I was when I first dove off that diving board, but that's not where I started learning to swim.
Right.
I started in the shallow end.
Exactly.
With a parent.
Yes. Yeah.
With floaties on, you know. And then, you learn how to swim, how to float, how to, all the things. And so it's the same kind of imagery with community. You can't just jump into the deep end when it comes to relationship, especially a new relationship, and expect you to go to such depths that you are desiring right off the bat. There's some time there. There's
right. You're playing a long game.
Yeah, you are. And I think the word I keep hearing too, which goes into something you mentioned earlier about your time and the time you invest, that's the word, is investment.
Yeah.
You get out what you put in a lot of times when it comes to relationships. And so when you're investing in someone, like what does that look like? What are your boundaries? We talked about earlier in a previous conversation about boundaries and breakups. I mean, that is a reality with friendships sometimes, and it's painful. None of us want to do that. But I mean, there is just seasons. There's ebbs and flows. And like you said earlier, like it constantly changes. And we are constantly changing. And as long as we're with Jesus in this thing, like he'll help us navigate these waters when it comes to community. So how do you navigate the trying out a friend, investing in a friend? Like what are your boundaries in that place? And then how do you handle those breakups?
It's really funny that I love examples. I grew up with a dad that taught us through examples, and the example God gave me for this is hilarious because it's about a fishing pole, and I do not fish, have no desire to fish. Unless the Lord gives me that desire, I'm never going to fish. And I wanted to kind of speak to you saying how you learn how to swim. Whoever's listening may not be a runner or a swimmer. I'm not into swimming, and that sounds terrifying. But that's an example of anything, cooking or whatever, to apply.
Right.
Anyway, back to the fishing pole. If you give me a fishing pole for my birthday, I'm going to say thank you. It's going to go in the attic. I'm just never going to use it. Some gifts just aren't for everyone. And that is the example God started sharing with me when I started diving into boundaries with him, because I have giftings for you.
That's right.
But you may not need them in that season. You may not want them. You may not like them. So then that kind of tells me where you're at on a level of friendship. So the book, Keep Your Love On by Danny Silk, has really influenced my boundary levels, because he speaks to like the center is God, and way out in the far ends are the random people you'll never even encounter. And so if you give me a fishing pole, that kind of tells me she doesn't know me and doesn't know what I like. So where should she go on this? And I can still believe your heart is very pure, and good and for me, but we just don't have that much in common.
Yeah.
Does that
We don't
make
know
sense?
each other
Yeah.
as well as like your inner circle of people.
Whereas my inner people know what flower I like, what color I wear, all the things. And just using that as an example, you have to kind of pay attention. For you to have the right boundaries, you have to be clued in to their behaviors, how they responded. If I text, does it take you 5 days to text back? Does that mean you're a bad texter, or am I just not on your radar?
Yeah.
And sometimes to move past into the awkward, you have to ask that question of how deep do you want to go? Or I had a friend that asked me to go to coffee tomorrow, and it was very blunt. And I joked and said, yeah, I'll go to coffee with you, but if I'm in trouble, I'm not going. And she replied, LOL, and she said, that did sound harsh. No, I just miss you.
Yeah.
So it wasn't even, it didn't have to turn into this huge confrontation. I just wanted to say, hey, are we good?
Yeah.
And there's ways, and only because I've done this so long with Jesus can I navigate that.
Yeah.
So it's a matter of, okay, Lord, where does this person land in my intimacy level?
Yeah.
And they said this. How do I navigate that? Do I sleep on it? And if it's still bothering me, does this need to be in person? And I would say most hard confrontations and the breakups need to be in person, because I need to see your face to read your heart. But the boundaries really is just a trial and error. I pursue you. Did you pursue me? Not you're keeping score, but my time is valuable, and I want to give it to people that want it.
That's good. Well, the truth of the matter is that we can't be best friends with everybody.
No.
It is impossible to have capacity for everyone you encounter.
Right.
Or everyone that may want your time, or everyone that you want their time.
Yes.
Because there are seasons, just like you said earlier, there are seasons, there's ebbs and flows. I mean, speaking on my probably journey with friendship and community, was you mentioned earlier when you were learning about your identity, your question, the lie that the enemy was speaking into your life was, I'm too much. Well, mine was, am I not enough?
Oh, yeah.
So it's opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't know, maybe that speaks to somebody too.
Yeah.
Like, there is a lie. Identify that and walk with that with Jesus, right? So that you can get past this place, because this is such an important, like, we know we need each other. And there is such an attack on community where, isolation is just such a huge problem. And
it's the easiest thing to do.
Yeah. It's easier to be isolated and to be busy with your life, your things, your world, be focused on that, rather than giving time and space for others because of one reason or another. Pick your reason. Right? Pick your reason. We won't have capacity for everybody, but we do need people in our lives. And so whether that comes in the form of friendships from the gym or church or work or neighborhood, or however that looks and shakes out for you, it's important to pursue it.
Right. Pursuit. You can't have a friendship without pursuit. To go back, though, and touch on what you just said, I don't think you can have solid, reliable, sure-footed friendships if you don't have identity in Jesus.
That's right.
You just can't, because you won't know what you stand for. And you said that you are told you're not enough. I do think we all have one main lie.
Yeah.
And I want to encourage you in Isaiah 62:2, it says, you shall be called by a new name, and the mouth of the Lord will give it. And so learning to combat those things, when you get that structure and identity, and you know what you stand for, and you know the Lord's voice, setting a boundary and knowing who you want to be friends with is a lot easier. Not easy, easier though.
Well, before we dive into thinking about our listeners, because I know that they're on our hearts. Like we've had a couple conversations about this, and everybody's in a different place. And I know this is not going to hit everyone, but there is a level at which, like, we're about to kick off life groups, and people are looking for that. They're looking for community. They desire it. They want it. And and it's tough. It's not easy to find. It's kind of like you have to do the same kind of thing with life groups, even as you try a life group and then you're like, that's not it.
Yes.
You know? And that's normal, right?
Yes.
Let's just put that out there.
Yes.
That is normal to test and see and give it a go. And if it takes you more than once or twice or 3 times or 4 times, it's okay.
Yep.
Don't give up.
Right.
Like, don't give up trying to find a community that you could see yourself fitting, but also don't expect that a community you jump into is going to instantly be the deep end of the pool either.
Right.
So to testify to that, my husband and I were a part of a young marrieds life group when we first got married. And it was great. We were all around the same stage of life. And then we started thinking about family, children, and we were like, we don't know what we're doing. Our friends don't know what they're doing because they haven't done it either. So with just leading of the Holy Spirit, honestly, and his wisdom and discernment in the area, put on my husband's heart for us to pray into going into a life group that was more seasoned, older than us, in a stage ahead of us. Was it terrifying? Yes. Did I want to leave what was comfortable? No, I did not. In fact, I was the one who was like clawing at the end going, I don't want to do this.
Yeah.
Because I was comfortable, but nothing, like, we don't grow in our comfort zones, okay? Comfort zones, if we're going to grow, it has to happen outside of that. So what encouragement would you give to someone who might have, like, I'm thinking about a specific person right now who wants to jump into community, but the spouse is hesitant, like I was.
Well, first of all, I want to say, I used to teach my boys when they started talking about dating, everyone's just looking for their same weird. We are all weird in some way. And we're just looking to match up with other weirdos that like the same things we do, right?
Amen. We're all weird. That's right.
And it's so funny as you're talking about your life group situation, there's difference. Everyone has different preferences. So there's going to be somebody that wants to be with the same people at the same age. Chad and I always wanted to be with people that were ahead of us and a variety. And either one's okay.
Yeah.
Chad and I like to lead a life group for 2 to 3, and then we like to start a whole new one.
That's cool.
And hopefully they'll launch and stay together, but that's just kind of the way the Lord's put on our hearts. And so to hear a story, I never like hearing a testimony and someone going, well, that's the law. That's how I have to do it.
Right.
You need to follow how Jesus wants you to do it. If your spouse loves and is crazy involved in this life group and you don't like it, I would say stay there and start asking the Lord to shift his heart or yours.
It's funny you say that because that's what I did. I prayed. I was like, either you shift my heart.
Well, God is a God of unity.
Yeah.
And so he wants the spouses and him all lined up.
That's good.
And the first place you do is start with prayer. And it's okay, I think, if your spouse doesn't want to go, ask the Lord and go without them. And just continue to invite them. Married 22 years, I would love to say that Chad and I are always on the same page about everything, but that's not real life. Yeah. And so that's just another topic of something you may not agree on, and asking the Lord, how do I navigate this?
Yeah.
And he will, if you take the time to listen, he will give you the answer. And also to speak to finding your weirdos.
Let's go.
Look around where you're at.
Proximity.
Yeah. I know that that's not always the best, but if you're a busy mom and you take your kids to the park and you see how a mom treats her child when the child's hurt or throwing a tantrum, there's your friend. Hey, man, you handled that like a pro. How did you do that? How did you keep your calm? Or like you said, maybe you're at a gym, or you see the same person at a coffee shop and they seem peaceful and you like the book they're reading.
Yeah.
And you never know, that might lead you and that person into a friendship that starts their own life group and find your own pack. So it's a creative thinking. Friendship isn't just a one size fits all.
It's not so linear.
No.
Like connect the dots, A to B, B to C, C to yeah.
Yeah. And yeah, it doesn't always make sense either.
Yeah, because it's not a formula.
Nope. I would love for it to be.
Me too.
I'm actually more type A than people believe. And I'm like, a formula would be really great.
Yes, absolutely.
But to kind of speak to the differences, I don't know where all this fits in. So, but I have a friend, I love outfit planning. If I'm going to outfit plan, I am texting this girl. But if I send it to these other friends that I have, they're just going to give me a generic, oh, that looks great. I'm like, no, we need to dissect this outfit.
See, I like that you're going back here because it's speaking to the gifts that's in a person. Like you're seeing a gift within your friend that she is actually really good at outfit planning and putting things together. So you've seen it, you're calling it up and out of her and affirming it in her by saying, hey, would you look at this outfit and give me your opinion?
Well, we're both the same age too. So it's like we're on this verge of we don't want to look like we're trying too hard to be 25, but we don't want to look like a granny either. So we are tracking.
There you go.
But then I have that same friend forgets to eat. And I don't understand people that forget to eat meals, but it's out there. I'm not going to send her a picture of something awesome I ate or made because she's not going to appreciate it. She's going to say, I'm glad you had a meal. You know?
Good for you.
Yeah. Whereas the friend that may not want to outfit talk is all in. She's
foodie.
Like, how did you make that?
Yeah.
And what does this look like? And so again, not one person, different people meet my needs when we've had some major grief. If I need truth spoken, I go to this friend because she's with grace going to say, this is what I see. If I need to be coddled, I have a friend that's going to gush over me and be my biggest cheerleader and just hug me and play with my hair. You know?
Yeah, what you need in the moment.
Right. And both are amazing, but neither one could do the other person's job.
Yeah. Well, it reminds me too of like the imagery that we read about in the Word where it talks about everyone has a part of the body. We all play a role, right? Yeah. And that's even in the same like vein as like when we're talking about community and friendship.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
And relationship with others.
And then in that community,
it's not one size fits all.
Yeah. In that community, it ebbs and flows. So in your 12 years of life group, you may connect better for a season with this person.
Right. Something you mentioned when we were chatting beforehand was about your mama.
Yeah.
Would you talk and give us that story real quick? Because there's a lot that we can glean from the older generation.
Yeah.
And so I'd love for you to share that story if you don't mind.
Yeah. So my mama was full of spunk and she kept friends. She stayed in the similar or vicinity within like 60 miles. So she had friends for 60 plus years. She had a group of women that raised their kids together, and they would come together after they got their kids off to school and have coffee. They'd like get their laundry started and then all sit and have some coffee and chat about what they're getting to do that day or what was going on. And I love that community. Two of them, they all lived on different blocks, but two of them like walk through the alley, across the alley to her house, or they'd trade houses and just invested. Gave each other time.
And access, yeah.
And access, that's a really good word. And so when we were discussing all this, I just said, I wonder if everyone took that and asked themselves, what's my version of Mama's coffee time?
Mm-hmm. How does that translate to culture in my life today?
Yes.
Yeah.
Because the thing is we are more connected, I use that in quotes, because of the internet and social media and texting. But if you're not doing face-to-face, you can't replace that.
That's right.
So who gets that face-to-face time? How often? That's on you. Mm-hmm. But it will shift your intimacy. So my questions kind of were, what's a reasonable goal for your version of Mama? Do you plan 2 social events? Put them on your calendar every month, you know? Or do you go, I'm going to try to meet one new person this semester, and then I'm going to try to see them and just see what it's about. Yeah. See if I can foster a new friendship. Or maybe you've already got someone and you want to pursue them out of your proximity. Like, I don't know that person really well and want to get uncomfortable and awkward. Maybe you have somebody that you're already kind of
surface level. Yeah.
And you want to take it like I did with my friend and say, hey, I want to practice being a good friend. Could we both get awkward together? I think just starting to identify where are my weak spots and how can I grow in those with Jesus and then project that onto a new friendship.
That's good.
I would like to say that because of all this work I've done with friendships, my friends like to make fun of how many people I know. They're like, how do you know that 80-year-old woman? I'm like, well, I did a Bible study once and we were in the same group. And they're like, how do you know that 18-year-old? It's like, well, I helped with youth camp 2 years, all the things that excites me.
Yeah.
But that doesn't have to be your story.
Yeah.
You may like only your age.
Yeah.
That's okay too.
Yeah.
I want to break the barriers of rules and also encourage everyone to embrace some of the awkward. Mm-hmm. If you look into the Word, no one did it alone. Mm-hmm. And God called Moses. He didn't want to do it alone. God's like, okay, I'll bring somebody in to help you. And there was always people. Yeah. And they sharpen us. They hurt us. It's a beautiful disaster, but it's how he designed it. And I would also say that 18 years of this journey, like intentionally, I still don't want to do it on some days. I still want to sit at home and be by myself. And those are the days that I push even harder to connect with somebody.
That's good.
Because if we just sit around thinking about ourselves and our own needs, we're not going to be very Jesus-like.
It's good.
It's not very biblical to just ponder on my own hurts. Is it biblical to find freedom in there and grow through it? Absolutely. But the days that I most want to neglect people are the days I really need them the most.
It's good. That's good, Keri. All right. Well, before we wrap up, I know you and I have chatted about this before, about books and resources and things. What resources would you recommend for someone who's wanting to grow in this area?
Yeah. I would keep your love on Danny Silk. He will teach you so much. You'll be so mad, but you'll also have tools.
There you go.
You're like, I still have to choose them again.
Yeah.
Friendship for Grown-Ups is the book I did with my friend 14 years ago, where we had, in our culture, there's a word, DTR, define the relationship, and it's usually for dating, but she and I really did do that, where we sat down and said, what do we want?
Expectations.
Yeah. And
that's good.
I loved that book. It's by the girl that played Blair on Facts of Life.
Yeah, I didn't grow up with that show. Sorry.
Lisa Welchel, maybe?
I'll look it up and I'll link it too in the show notes.
And then All My Friends Have Issues.
Okay.
And I can't remember who wrote that book. Cool story about that is I was getting to teach about friendship, and a friend who's not super close with me had read it and thought, Keri Hoes needs to read this book. And she mailed it to me through Amazon, not even knowing that I was about to teach on this.
Wow.
And so it's a cool story of like Jesus is saying, because you're not sure when you start talking on a topic, you doubt going, well, what do I know? Who am I?
Sure.
And that book coming in and reading it, it was like, no, the Lord said, I see you. I know what you've done to get to this point.
I'm seeing the work.
Let's celebrate it.
Done
and
this together. Yeah.
Share it.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah.
That's good. Well, I would also add to this list, Find Your People by Jenny Allen.
Yeah.
That talked a lot about like that proximity piece of like looking at your, I think she
gives a lot of practicalities.
She does give a lot of practicalities, but I think she talks about like a 15-mile radius around your home of like looking at people who are going to the same grocery store you're going to and to the same coffee shop you're attending or your kid's school and stuff like that. So it's a lot of practical things, but also one of the biggest takeaways I got from that book was you go first.
Yep.
Like this is something you need.
Yep.
Everyone is the same. They all need it too. So, but you go first.
Usually I'm the pursuer, and I've gotten comfortable with that. You have to fight over it's not fair, it's blah, blah, blah. It's like, no, this is the gift I have, is to pursue, and I'm going to do it.
Good. I think that needs to be said.
Yeah.
And it needs to stay in here because that's true. Like there are pursuers, and then there are those, and the ones who plan and pursue, and then there are the ones who don't think about it.
Yeah.
And it's just not their gift.
Yeah.
But maybe we can also all grow in it, right?
Yes.
We can all grow in both of these places.
Yeah.
Of being the planner or the pursuer and the one who checks in. Like I literally have on my calendar, I have these goals, and one of my goals is to call a friend. Mm-hmm. And I set up appointments for myself to call a friend and check in.
My husband is so goal-driven and type A that he doesn't think outside of that, and had to learn, I want to have the heart to check on people. And a lot of times he'd think about them, but it's like in the middle of the night, and he'd forget.
Right, when it's too late, yeah.
Right. So he starts putting reminders on his phone to check in with people, because that's how his brain works. And that's
good.
okay too.
That's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you're out there and you're listening to this conversation, you're like, whoa, so how do I move forward? I would say go to Jesus first.
Yeah.
He knows you best, just like Keri has said multiple times. He knows the way he made you. And he made you in your mother's womb. You are fearfully and wonderfully made. And he will reveal to you the steps that you need to take to, make this practical for you. Make this applicable for you in your season with the people that are in your life or the people that he's brought to your life, if it's new, and going deeper when it comes to pursuit and pursuing community, because we all know we need it. We do life better when we do it together.
Yes. And getting comfortable with the awkward, because there's going to be rejection and go, well, I tried it with that person. That doesn't mean it's never going to work.
That's good. And that's, again, a lie the enemy would love for us to sink our teeth deep into, is going, well, it didn't work, so I'm just not going to try again.
Right. Where would we be if that was our attitude toward everything? We would never expand our food palette. We would never learn how to swim.
Yeah.
If we just said, well, I tried it once and nope, done.
Yeah.
So endurance is the name of the game.
And being okay with being an amateur.
Yeah, totally. And my thought always is like, I can always use another friend.
Yeah.
I mean, I'll try it out. If it works, I have another person to smile and hug and love.
Good. I love that.
So,
well, thanks, Keri, for coming in today and sharing your heart and just your journey with us and your story and being honest. And I know you've prayed through the conversation today, and I just believe in, this is going to bless other people.
Man, I hope so. I really do. God loves all of you, and he wants you to have full, satisfied friendship lives.
It's good. Oh, I hope you were encouraged as much as I was today. Sometimes we just need these conversations to remind us, of the things that we need to, go to Jesus with and ask him for discernment and leading. We say a lot around here, doing life with others is so important. We can get caught in our own schedules and routines and our own little worlds, but it's better when we do life together. Yes, we talked a lot about friendship, but it's all got to start with Jesus. So, what is he telling you today? Do you know who you are in him? Maybe he is revealing to you the lie that you've been believing that's held you back when it comes to pursuing friendship and community. Do you maybe need to attend the group's launch party at the end of August? Yes, shameless plug. I'll link more information about that in the show notes, but maybe jumping into a Bible study or a book study is what you need to try. Or maybe you just need to have some time with the Holy Spirit and have him help you find your version of Mama's coffee time. Remember, there's no formula to finding your weirdos and being known by others, but listen to what the Holy Spirit is leading you to do and do it. Like always, links and resources mentioned in today's episode will be in the show notes. Thanks so much for listening to the Beyond Sundays podcast. We hope you'll have a wonderful day. And remember, God is always moving, and he's moving in your life too. Beyond Sundays.